At the time of writing, the God of War Greek trilogy remake just got announced. I never really played the original games back in the day. I knew of them, but they weren't on my radar. My cup was mostly filled with mascot platformers, the Jak and Daxters, Sly Coopers, Ratchet and Clank's big three in the PlayStation 2 platformer lineup, honestly, and just about anything else that reminded me of those games. I love them, they're great. When I got older and expanded my palette into a wider range of games, I got fairly into Devil May Cry, Resident Evil, Metal Gear, all that good stuff. But I still didn't think that much of the God of War series until the Norse games came out and everybody and their mothers started talking about it. I played 2018 and I really enjoyed my time with it, and I'd like to experience the original games before the Greek trilogy gets remade. I very recently finished the first God of War, and I feel like I'm going to piss some people off. The more I think about it, the more disappointed I am with the realization that it isn't what I'd expected. I've really been struggling to figure out why exactly I didn't enjoy my time in God of War, and I think it boils down to expectation. These games got incredibly hyped up after the Norse games came out by OG fans, but I can't help but disagree. It feels like everybody hyping up Interstellar or Inception, then you get around to watching it, and it's just alright. I've never so much touched this game before now, and I wish I could say that I enjoyed my time, but I really didn't. I feel like the most common comparison, at least back in the day, was God of War is kind of like a westernized Devil May Cry. Now, I didn't get into Devil May Cry until my 20s. I had a friend who was obsessed with DMC3 20-some years ago, but back then I really didn't understand the hype. Like I said, my bread and butter were the 3D mascot platformers. But eventually I did get around to playing basically every DMC game minus the Ninja Theory one because I was told that it sucked. I'll have to try it out for myself sometime. And I understood exactly why it was so loved. I mean, except of course DMC2 because that game is piss boring, but what could I say about it that hasn't already been said? My point in all this is I played what I consider to be my Japanese reference point to the westernized God of War, and I loved it, but when I finally got around to playing God of War 1, I was incredibly disappointed since I felt like I had already played something better. It might seem a bit unfair to compare these two games on the basis of them both being character action games, since despite being in the same genre, they play fairly differently. Devil May Cry is a considerably harder game by comparison, and has the backing of fighting game experience to pull from to create a very well-refined move list for each of Dante's weapons. DMC was also notoriously hard back in the day. It still is, honestly. God of War is actually pretty damn easy, which I don't think is a bad thing. This makes the game more accessible to anybody. God of War's move list is very limited, which I do think is both a good and a bad thing. It's good mostly because that means anybody could pick it up, it's still accessible after all, but there's very little reason to utilize certain combos over others when mashing a single button or one button combo does the job most effectively. DMC gets around this for those who care by implementing a style meter, which grants a higher score at the end of the level, which in turn grants a higher number of red orbs for the sake of purchasing upgrades. God of War has something similar, but in form of the hit combo meter, which grants red orbs for the same reason, but I feel falls short because I feel it doesn't take advantage of Kratos' unique fighting style. Thematically, I don't think it would make sense for Kratos to be stylish. I'm not suggesting that the same system should have been adopted. Instead, what I would have liked to see is God of War take advantage of how much damage Kratos can dish out in such a short amount of time to such a wide range of enemies. The combo meter suggests that this was the idea, but the amount of enemies on screen at any given time doesn't support the ability to have a high hit combo. This simply could have been a limitation on the PS2, and if that were the case, I kind of understand. But the technical limitations are what create some of the best games. Would have been nice if they figured out a way to increase the number of enemies through figuring out how many could fit on screen before the performance tanked. Then place a set number of enemies that could appear at once lower than that number. Then, once the enemy count began to shrink as the player kills them, spawn a few more up to that predetermined capacity. It's not like the game didn't have its moments of high enemy spawns. I can think of 3 moments where there was just a confusingly high amount of enemies spawning at once. Once at the beginning in the room used to rotate the ballista, the hallway in the Temple of Pandora where the wall is slowly shrinking the size of the arena, and the second phase of the Aries boss fight where you have to fight a ton of Kratoses. What's the plural of Kratos? I mean, he's just one guy. There wouldn't be a need to have a plural, right? But there's also clearly more than one Kratoses? Kratosi? Kratusi? I don't know. My point is that they were capable of having large amounts of enemies on screen at once, so why not have more instances where it's possible to have a high hit combo to further support that feature? I think an enemy account around the Gauntlet level would have been nice from the game series Gauntlet. Gauntlet has a lot more enemies coming from everywhere all at once, but I never feel incredibly overwhelmed when I play due to the attack speed of each character. I'm not requesting like a Greek dynasty warriors, that might even exist. I actually don't know jack about dynasty warriors other than the sheer number of enemies, but a little more than what's provided would have made the combat feel more rewarding. The second issue I have with God of War are the number of puzzles and gimmicks involved. A puzzle or two every so often is fine. A gimmick or two every so often is fine. But when it feels as if the game is more puzzle or gimmick than anything, I start to wonder if I was wrong about every expectation I had. Now, don't get me wrong, I like pulling a lever as much as the next guy. Levers are great. They open doors, they call lifts, they launch trebuchets, they're wonderful. But I feel like 20% of the game is pulling a lever for a really long time just to raise an elevator, to rotate the Temple of Pandora rings, to rotate some blocks around, to activate a timer, etc. It goes on and on. It's a lot of lever pulling. Kratos pulls more levers than I did when I was 15. I was expecting to be doing a lot of fighting. The fighting is really good, and I like the enemies that we fight, but there's not enough of it. And lever pulling was just one aspect that extends the length of God of War further in an unfun way. There's a good amount of block pushing, mashing to open doors, swimming in empty stretches of nothing, rope climbing, wall climbing, beam walking. At this point, I know it sounds like I'm just listing shit for the sake of listing shit, and while it's not entirely an incorrect notion, there are aspects that take time away from what I would rather be doing more of, which is fighting things. Some traversal methods other than walking are okay, but the sheer amount of slow-moving traversal methods with little combat between rooms. It's no wonder Kratos hates riddles. He's done more than enough puzzles and riddles between fighting shit to cover a few generations. Sometimes I just want to walk forward without having to stop, grab the block, grab the lever, grab the wall, grab the rope, grab my cock. We grab a lot of shit, and it just makes the game feel longer without really extending its playtime. Now, I wouldn't mind if the game were longer, if the length was filled with more fighting large amounts of skeletal warriors. This isn't even counting the amount of one-hit killers that exist. Most of the game takes place in the Temple of Pandora. The reason we're here is to find Pandora's box. The box is going to give Kratos the ability to challenge Aries, the god of war, at the behest of Athena. Aries is going nuts, and Athena wants him dead, so she uses Kratos to get it done. Kratos has his own reasons for wanting to kill Aries as well, since Kratos was tricked by Aries into killing his own family. To get the box, Kratos has to complete 3 challenges within the Temple of Pandora, plus 1, because nothing can ever be that simple. The challenges of Atlas, Poseidon, and Hades. Hades nuts, got him. Each with their own special little blend of bullshit that will instantly kill you in one way or another. Atlas's challenge contains the loudest set pieces known to man. Buzzsaws, conveyor belts, crushy spike walls, and lots of other very loud machinery. The goal of the challenge is to obtain a lever to lift Atlas's rock and toss it at a wall, but to do that, we gotta get through the obstacles, which really aren't that big of a deal. It's just about timing. And taking damage isn't the biggest deal either, since there are plenty of green chests lying around to replenish your health, or minotaurs to stab in the mouth. The brand of bullshit in Atlas's challenge is pretty minor in my opinion. It comes from picking up the lever because we just can't get away from these fucking things. The arena is timed, and if you run out of time, you die from a giant trapdoor in the floor. It seems simple enough. The enemies that spawn in the room are a bunch of shield skeletons and sirens. It's kind of a hellish combination because the shieldy men can't be hurt until the shield is broken via the square-square triangle combo. If it were just that, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. The sirens are ranged enemies, so they have a propensity to throw shit. Everything that hits Kratos will stagger him, interrupting whatever animation he was in the middle of doing. The sirens would often interrupt me mid-attack right before the slam would come down that would break the shields, which would in turn leave Kratos open to a follow-up by said skeleton. The next thought would be to just get rid of the sirens first, right? If only they didn't have the tendency to dodge just about every single attack thrown at them. Some enemies are rough because they have a lot of health, others are rough simply because they're incredibly agile. I would have liked if this room was something of a DPS check. I like the idea of the shield skeletons, but the sirens, when they can be hit, don't have a lot of health. Perhaps this could have been the one room to send an unrelenting number of enemies upon the player to stress the importance of proper magic usage or rage of the gods. But like I said, this gripe is pretty minor, as you still have full control to dictate the pace of the fight, come back, try something else, or do anything to get the timing better. In Poseidon's challenge, Kratos has the ability to dive underwater. It's already looking very grim. There's no combat underwater, which in this case, thank God, because it would have been horrible. In my opinion, it would have been better to not have an underwater section to begin with. Swimming is incredibly boring. Normally, perhaps such a break in combat would be seen as a godsend, as the player might have been doing a lot of fighting, they're low on health, and maybe they just need 10 minutes or so as a breather. But that's the thing. I never felt stressed whatsoever. I've been craving things to fight, and there's just not enough when half of the game is puzzles and incredibly slow traversal. Then there's this room where the wall moves down this hallway really damn fast, and if a single pixel so much as touches you, you die. You don't just die, though. You get dragged all the way to the other side of the room with no means of escape, and then you die. I love spending even more time being forced to be in this place that I don't want to be in when I would rather be fighting. That's sarcasm for those who can't pick up on that. If I could give one good aspect to Poseidon's challenge, it would be the introduction of the Cerberus dogs. They are something of a little DPS check of their own, and I really like them conceptually. They start out as little pups that you have to deal with as quickly as possible before they transform into the large three-headed hound. There's some rooms where they're overutilized, but I would have loved to see them appear in more places than this. And then there's Hades' challenge, which, in my opinion, is really just one part of it. It's this frickin' beam. Balancing is already not my forte. I am a dizzy bitch. But they really wanted to rub salt in my eyes by having these spinning death spikes. It's not hard to figure out. It might take a few tries to get the timing right, and to get used to the shifting camera, but it's not hard necessarily. One hit from a spike pushes Kratos off the ledge into death, insta-killing the player, but insta-killing the player doesn't extend the length of the game in the healthiest of ways. If anything, it leads to an immediate "what the fuck was that" reaction. Of course, if the dev team wants to play fair, it's not a recurring event, and can be navigated with relative ease so long as the player puts in the least bit of attention. A lot of these instant death moments are easily navigable once you're aware of their existence. My issue comes from the fact that these challenges themselves are just kind of boring. It's a really slow walk across the beams. It's a really slow swim through the tunnels with a whole lot of nothing happening for the longest of times. But then, to make it even harder, they add these rooms that can just kill you in one hit just to force the player to pay attention. Never mind the fact that I'd rather be fighting demons and shit, which is the main draw of the game. At least that's what I thought. I will give Hades something. It is more fun than Poseidon's challenge, as it introduces this soul ring challenge thing, where the idea is to kill a number of enemies within the circle to progress. This is the type of challenge I would have loved to see more often. Like Atlas's trial, with the trapdoor, it's combat related. We get to kill shit, which is all I really want from a game titled God of War. Like any gimmick, I don't think it should be everywhere, but it's the type of challenge that's conducive to the type of game that we're playing. Once these challenges are done, we get to fight the first boss since the Hydra. and it's this Iron Bull motherfucker. His design is really cool, and his fight is actually really fun when it's not forcing you to do a bunch of contrived shit just to damage it. This thing is covered in armor and can't be damaged until all of it gets removed. If it were just as simple as hit the man until the armor falls off, this wouldn't be a problem. In fact, I think it'd be so much better, as it could proceed in its different phases and become more of a challenge as the fight goes on, as it already does, but the manner in which we remove his armor is just contrived as hell. First, you damage him until the 4 jets of steam shoot off from his armor, and then he covers his little head. Then you climb onto his back, do the QTE to stun him, and then run all the way to the back of the arena to pull a lever and shoot a log at his face from a log cannon that just exists in this room for no fucking reason. Rinse and repeat until the armor is gone. It's a fight that feels like it doesn't really start until you figure out the puzzle to deal damage to the boss. I didn't even realize that I wasn't doing anything to him until maybe the 10th time or so doing the QTE and realizing literally nothing is happening. They do show the lever for the log cannon, but only when you enter the room for the very first time. By the time you come back, you've already done the entirety of the Hades challenge and possibly forgot the lever even exists. Unfortunately, not every combat challenge is a fun one. For the vast majority of combat that I've played through, I've had a pretty good time. The combat is really good. There is one room, however, that was more annoying than anything, and I call it the roller derby. It's the final room before collecting Pandora's box. The walls are rotating, there are conveyor belts built into the floors, each moving in the opposite direction of each other. This whole configuration is a nightmare of a fight that isn't hard necessarily, but it's incredibly annoying. Standing in one place for too long and you'll slide into the rotating walls that damage you when you touch them. There are platforms that exist where there are skeleton archers shooting arrows, and you'd think that it'd be a great place to rest from the constant motion, but attached to the walls are jets of fire that insta-kill the player, forcing you to stay on the conveyor belts. The main enemy in this room are harpies, and that's probably because they couldn't figure out what other enemy to put there. All other enemies likely just died from the rotating walls. Personally, I never figured out air combat. If it's even a thing outside of the primary airtime combo, that is. Maybe that would make this room easier. I would argue that this room shouldn't be on the main path. If they really just really wanted this room, it should have been a trap or a challenge or something on a side path somewhere that led to a lot of red orbs or something. Because there's nothing more aggravating to me than being forced onto a path or a position that I didn't choose. Learning to path and fight in this room while constantly swapping back and forth between automatic movements of left and right could be a good challenge if they remove the walls. The reward for completing this room should have been more than, you get to continue the game now. It could have been a great Muse Room challenge. The Muse Room is a room within the Rings of Pandora that require 2 Muse keys to open. They're not hard to find. It's free experience and upgrades. Perhaps the roller derby could have been a required challenge to get those upgrades. Prove to Zeus that you're worthy of a little extra help beyond the challenge of finding 2 easily accessible keys that are along the path forward. The third issue that I have with God of War is Hades. All of it. After completing the roller derby, we get the box. Athena tells us that we have to drag it all the way to Athens, but in reality we don't actually have to, because Aries can just pull shit out of his ass, literally, and chuck it halfway across the world because he can just do that. Why didn't he do it earlier and prevent this whole shebang in the first place? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. It's a mystery even my infinite wisdom cannot solve. Either way, it takes us to Hades, from what I've been told, is a level they wanted to make longer but didn't have the time to implement everything they wanted. They had to cut some things and didn't even playtest it. Hades is incredibly short, taking maybe an hour at most to do. That's because this whole level consists of rotating beams with spikes on them, both in vertical and horizontal positions. If you jump, you'll continue moving at the same speed as if you were walking, which allows one to get through faster. Falling is still possible. It is an instant death. and they place archers and imps on some of the platforms to try and knock you off. But if you do fall and come back at one of these checkpoints, odds are you'll get punched in the face by an archer or an imp the moment you spawn back in, because the enemies didn't disappear. The worst part of Hades has to be the vertical spikes. They took the horizontal spike beams that we were already walking across and then rotated them 90 degrees and forced you to climb all the way up a cliff. Twice. This is the type of shit that your parents tell you how they had to walk to school every day. Go forward and back in the snow, in Hades, up these spike walls. Every time you get hit, you get tetanus. And then have to go to the hospital for a tetanus shot and then still get to school on time, damn it. Fuck off. If you get hit by a spike, you'll fall all the way to the bottom of the cliff and have to climb it all the way again. Thankfully, it's the last of the bullshit. To say something positive about Hades, it does contain one combat challenge that I think was good and could have been present much more, similar to the Soul Rings. The final stretch of Hades has us killing a bunch of satyrs by twos. After each pair dies, a platform appears leading to the exit. I like this for two reasons. One, combat, and then two, the combat is a direct, tangible form of progression other than clearing a room just to unlock a door. We see the platforms rising. We know for each satyr killed, another platform is created. It gives the player a direct sense of control for the progress they make. We killed the satyrs, and a platform spawns. We did that, and now the game is telling us to keep doing it in order to create the path out. The final real issue I have with God of War from a gameplay standpoint comes from the Aries boss fight. The fight itself comes in 3 phases, with the first being my absolute favorite. I want to keep talking positive, so I'll start there. Pandora's box makes Kratos big. Bigger than Tom Hanks. Big enough to fight a god. The god in question is Aries. I genuinely wish this first phase was the entire fight. It's a real challenge that tests everything you've learned up to this moment. When to attack, what attack to use, when to block, when to run away, when to dodge, when to use a spell, what spell to use, how often to use that spell. It's genuinely an amazing back and forth, and it's not easy. He's an incredibly hard opponent, and the fight will take several attempts to learn these things, but it doesn't feel unfair. It's not until the second phase where it all falls apart. The second phase of Aries is the Kratosi fight that I mentioned earlier, where we fight a vast multitude of Kratoses. I still don't know what to say. There's a lot of them. I've neglected mentioning much of the story because there's really not a lot to tell. But the gist is Kratos killed his family after being tricked by Ares to do so, and now Ares is tormenting Kratos by forcing him to watch him kill his family over and over again in an attempt to break Kratos' will. There are 2 health bars to manage during this, yours and your family's. You heal by killing the Kratoses. Your family heals by being hugged by you, which transfers your life essence into them. It's about as anime as the story gets for being written by Americans. First you press circle to heal them, then you press circle to push your daughter away. It's the duality of a Spartan or whatever. Either way, this shit is hard as fuck. The only advice I can give is to have Rage of the Gods ready at some point and have a full mana bar. It's also incredibly easy to just slip off the edge of this map into the abyss. With how much I've been begging for large amounts of enemies to fight, you'd think I'd really like this segment, but I don't. I was just in the best fight that this game had to offer, only for it to shift into managing multiple health bars against incredibly tanky versions of myself in an incredibly small arena. Again, I think it would have been fine as like a challenge mode concept, but not for the main game. Kratos' third phase is just disappointing. Once Kratos saves his family, Ares takes away the Blades of Chaos, the weapon that we've been using for the entire game, and uses them to kill Kratos' family again. Kratos emerges from Ares' domain expansion plane of existence, now weaponless and magicless. Maybe not weaponless exactly. There is a sword that Kratos takes from a nearby statue, but it sucks. It has its own moveset, which is nothing like the Blades of Chaos that we've been using the entire game, maybe about 5 to 7 hours at this point. The fight now changes dramatically into an incredibly defense-heavy strategy. The moveset that the sword has is incredibly slow, and Aries is incredibly fast. I tried a lot of methods to beat him, but only one thing worked consistently, which is to run up on his face and hold the block button. When he's done with his combo, spam the circle button until it finishes, then resume blocking. There's really only one or two moves that Aries does that can't be blocked, so that's that. Overall, God of War 1 was a huge disappointment for me. I can't say that it's bad because a lot of mechanics are really well made. Its enemy design is really neat. I like skeletons and monsters. Its story is also a lot more compelling than a lot of people are willing to give credit for. I mean, literacy is in the shitters, so that probably contributes to it these days, but there's a ton of nuance between Kratos and Athena, who I just want to say, fuck Athena. Kratos just killed a god for you. He didn't want to be made a god in kind. He wanted the nightmares to stop. He wanted to move on. He did everything you asked of him and more, and you still wouldn't reward him with the only thing he wanted was just to finally be at peace with the mistakes that he made and end the nightmares plaguing his life. What he did was horrible, but after everything he's done to make up for it, for you don't think he deserves a little rest? Not only that, but you gave him a duplicate of the Blades of Chaos as a symbol of his newfound godhood. You gave him a duplicate of the weapons that served as a constant reminder of what he did under his service to Ares. Athena, you trifling-ass bitch! I also realize after saying all of that, I have a friend named Athena. Not you, hun. You're wonderful. Anyway, I've been told that God of War 2 is way better. I'm sure I'll have played it by the time this video comes out. Hell, I might have even played the whole series by then. I don't know if I'll make a video on any of them, but who knows? What I do know, however, is that I have more hot takes on games that people have nostalgia for, so stay tuned. My name is Box. Please like and subscribe, and have a wonderful day.